Hotels are strange places. Thousands of people have slept in the same bed, stared at the same ceiling, and left behind something you can't always name. Tonight, 3 people checked in, and not all of them checked out the way they expected. The third story, I want to warn you about the third story. It's not about what was in the room. It's about what the hotel already knew about the person staying in it before they arrived. Stay with me. The guest in 214. I was driving pharmaceutical samples across the Midwest in February of last year. Iowa, mostly. Long flat roads and nothing on the radio but static and weather warnings. I'd been on the road since 6 in the morning and it was closing in on 11 at night when I pulled off I-80 near Adair and found a Holiday Inn Express just off the exit ramp. The parking lot was almost empty. A few semis idling along the far edge. My headlights swept across the entrance and I remember thinking, good. Quiet. I just needed 6 hours and a shower. The woman at the front desk was friendly. Late 40s, reading glasses pushed up on her head. She gave me room 214, second floor, end of the hall. Said breakfast started at 6. I thanked her, took my key card, and carried my bag up the stairwell. The hall was the way hotel halls always are at that hour. Long. That specific shade of beige that exists nowhere else on Earth. The carpet pattern doing something geometric that didn't quite resolve if you stared at it. I found 214, tapped the key card, and pushed the door open. The TV was on. I stopped in the doorway. The room was dark except for the television, some cable news channel, muted, the closed caption scrolling. The bed was made. My eyes moved across the room slowly. Bathroom door, open. Closet, open. Nothing. I figured housekeeping had left it on. It happens. I set my bag down and turned the TV off. I brushed my teeth, got into bed, and was asleep within minutes. I woke up at 2:17 according to the clock. The TV was on again. Same channel. Muted. Closed caption scrolling. I sat up and watched it for a moment. The remote was on the nightstand where I'd left it. I turned the TV off again and lay back down. At 3:44 it came back on. I got up, unplugged it from the wall, and stood there in the dark for a moment. That's when I noticed the smell. Faint. Something like cigarette smoke, stale, old, coming from the bathroom. I hadn't noticed it before. I pushed the bathroom door open wider. Nothing there. Just the smell, and the faint hum of the ventilation fan. In the morning I mentioned the TV at checkout. The woman at the desk typed something, then stopped. She looked up at me over her glasses. She asked which room I was in. I told her. 214. She looked back at her screen for a long moment. Then she said she was sorry, that room had been flagged, it was supposed to be taken out of rotation. She said it like she was reading from a script she'd rehearsed. Didn't explain what flagged meant. Didn't explain why it had been taken out of rotation. I didn't ask. I'm not sure I wanted to know. I've stayed in hundreds of hotels since then. I still check the bathroom before I set down my bag. I still note where the plug is on the television. And if the TV is already on when I open the door, I ask for a different room. The next story comes from someone who had a very simple explanation for what happened, right up until they talked to their wife. Checkout was at 11. My wife and I drove up to Asheville, North Carolina last October for our anniversary. We'd booked a boutique hotel downtown, the kind of place with exposed brick and locally sourced soap. We'd been looking forward to it for 2 months. We checked in on a Friday evening. 3rd floor, room 31. The room was genuinely nice. Big clawfoot tub. A window that looked out over the mountains going dark in the distance. We had dinner, walked around downtown, came back and fell asleep early. It was a good night. The second night is what I want to talk about. Around midnight, something woke me. Not a sound exactly. More like a pressure change. The feeling of a door closing somewhere very close. I lay still for a moment, listening. The room was quiet. My wife was asleep beside me. Then I heard it. Movement. From the closet. Not violent. Not frantic. Just a slow, deliberate shifting weight. Like someone adjusting how they were standing. I reached over and turned on the bedside lamp. I sat up and stared at the closet door. It was closed. I couldn't remember if it had been closed before we went to sleep. We hadn't used it, our clothes were still in our bags. I got up. My wife stirred, asked what was wrong. I told her nothing, go back to sleep. I opened the closet door. Empty. 3 wooden hangers. The hotel's ironing board folded against the wall. I stood there long enough to feel slightly ridiculous. Closed the door. Got back into bed. In the morning, my wife asked me why our luggage had been moved. Both our bags, which I had put along the wall near the window, were now at the foot of the bed. Neatly. Side by side. Like someone had arranged them there. Neither of us had moved them. We didn't talk about it much. That's the thing about traveling with someone you love, you protect each other from the parts that don't make sense. We checked out. We drove home. We told people we had a great time, which was true, mostly. But a few weeks later she mentioned it. Quietly, while we were doing dishes. She said she'd been awake when I opened the closet. She said that while I was standing there, looking in, she saw the bathroom door, behind me, reflected in the closet mirror, slowly open. And then slowly close. She hadn't said anything because she thought she was still half asleep. She thought she'd imagined it. We haven't booked a hotel since. We're not sure it would happen again. We're not sure it wouldn't. That last story could have been a system error, a coincidence, a trick of memory, and I think that's precisely why it's the one I can't stop thinking about. What the registry said. In the spring of 2019, I was in Savannah, Georgia for a work conference. Financial risk management, not interesting, I know. But the hotel was nice. One of those old converted buildings on the river, the kind with the original floors and the elevator that opens with a gate. I checked in on a Wednesday afternoon. The man at the desk was young, new, you could tell by the way he used the keyboard, searching for each key deliberately. He pulled up my reservation, typed in my ID, and then paused. He looked at his screen. Then at me. Then back at the screen. He smiled, the customer service version, and said he'd be right back. He went through a door behind the desk. I stood there for maybe 4 minutes. Another staff member came out, older, a manager's posture, and told me warmly that there had been a small system issue, nothing to worry about, and handed me my key. I went up to my room. 6th floor. Long hall, dark wood, the smell of old buildings, that's not unpleasant. I got settled, went to the conference dinner, came back around 10. On my pillow, there was a small card. The kind hotels use for turn-down service, thick paper, the hotel's logo at the top. But it wasn't a turn-down note. It was a printed reservation confirmation. My name. My home address in Decatur. My credit card's last 4 digits. And a checkout date of April 14th, 2019. I checked in on April 16th. I stood there holding this card for a long time. The checkout date was 2 days before I had arrived. Which meant, according to this document, I had already stayed here. Already left. I called down to the front desk. The night manager listened carefully. She asked me to bring the card down, which I did. She looked at it without any visible reaction. Said she'd look into it and have someone follow up in the morning. No one followed up. I didn't sleep much that night. I kept coming back to a specific thought I couldn't let go of. If the system believed I had checked out 2 days ago, then who did the system think was in my room right now? In the morning I tried once more. Different manager. He looked at the card, nodded slowly, said it was likely a system migration error from when they updated their software. But here's what I keep coming back to, months later, years later. When I got home and told my wife, she went quiet in a particular way. Then she said, "You told me you pushed the trip back. You said the conference was postponed." I didn't. I have no memory of telling her that. She has a very clear memory of me calling her from the road on April 14th, 2 days before I left, and telling her I was heading home early. She'd been relieved. She'd made dinner. She says she heard my voice. 3 rooms. 3 stays. 3 people who went looking for nothing more than a few hours of sleep and a place to set down their bags. What stayed with them is harder to name than what they saw. Tonight I want to ask you something specific. Have you ever checked into a room and felt, in some way you couldn't justify, that someone had just been there? That the air hadn't quite settled yet? Leave it in the comments. I read them. New stories arrive here every day. Subscribe if you want them. And tonight, before you sleep, don't think too hard about all the mornings you've woken up and simply assumed that nothing happened while your eyes were closed.